Now, there's a huge dialogue going on with CeeDee Lamb. On Twitter, YouTube, you name it. Is the guy number one? What's going on? He's trash. I'm hearing all of it, right? And I think that the biggest thing that some people aren't understanding is there's a full dialogue that needs to be had here. It's a lot more deep than you think. And there's an aspect to this that I think a lot of people aren't talking about. And we're going to mention that in today's video. Now, to start things off, of course, that week one game, horrible offensively. That goes from quarterback play, offensive play calling and design of the calls and all that other stuff. Like, it was bad all around. Like, no questions asked. But you look at the targets, and I know a lot of people mention the targets and the catch rate and all this other crap. So you look at the numbers, right? Lamb had 11 targets, 2 receptions, 18% catch rate for 29 yards. Dalton Schultz, 9 targets, 7 receptions, 78% catch rate, 62 yards. Noah Brown, 9 targets, 5 receptions, and that's a 56% catch rate at 68 yards. And then the rest is kind of like 5 and below. But those were your 3 main guys right there. And a lot of people are like, well, Space Cowboy, like, it just looks like Lamb isn't it. But my thing is, number one, it's just one game, so I think we need a bit more of a record to say that, because I understand that CeeDee Lamb, he hasn't scored a touchdown in like 10 weeks or something like that, and that's even going to last year, and he hasn't had a 100-yard game, I think, since the Vikings game. Now, the thing is, and I hate that, because really, if you look back, that New Orleans game would have been a 100-yard game if it wasn't for the rush play that they counted. Like, it was the screenplay that got them to the 1 that counted as a rush instead of a pass. If that was counted as a pass, that would have been that would have made him a 100-yard receiver that day. But that's one thing, right? And I get it. There's a whole lot of pressure for him to succeed, but this is the part where I think people need to realize is that the teams that are looking at the Cowboys, especially offensively, have really just one game plan. Okay, we're going to double, triple team CeeDee Lamb and try to have the Cowboys beat us using Dalton Schultz and their other guys, which in their opinion, like outside of us, are no names. Right? And that's how people are viewing the Cowboys. And you have these other receiving options that don't have a whole lot of game experience. And then you have guys like James Washington out. You have guys like Michael Gallup out, which in my opinion would help the offense a lot more, because those are threats that you have seen and you have to game plan for. But this also falls on Kellen Moore, most importantly. Listen, you go look back at some of these plays, and I was just looking at a couple the other day. There are plays where these route trees that we're running, and I hate to say it because it sounds like I'm being a broken record here, because I've said this. The problem is that you need to be able to scheme your guys open, and then it is on the quarterback to get these guys the ball. And so when you have a breakdown of one of those two, your receiving options, they're not going to get a whole lot of stats, time to actually showcase themselves, because you're not doing your due diligence there. No, there's some people in the comment section, Space, you're lying, you're just making excuses for everybody and all this other stuff. I never said that CeeDee Lamb has played well in this game, especially to start this year. I haven't really said much other than, hey, I think that you got a guy in CeeDee Lamb that has been ascending since he entered the league. I think it's just a matter of how you utilize him. And how are you getting him involved in the offense? Remember, that was a key thing that I said, was that not only do you have to give the guy targets, you have to make sure this guy is getting quality looks. It's not about like, okay, Space, we threw the ball 25 times, you only caught it 5 times. Like, you could look at the stat sheet and you could be like, like you pull out an index card and you're like, Space, he had 25 targets for, only on 5 catches, like some nonsense like that. But you have to look at what's going on. And in that game, even, like, during the game, you can tell That's exactly what the Bucks were doing. They were doing the, listen, you're going to pass the ball. We're going to make you try to beat us with your other options. And that's the problem that the Cowboys didn't have last year. The problem was that they kind of tried to sprinkle the ball around with the three-headed monster that they had, or like the other options involved. And that, of course, led to kind of it being diffused amongst the bunch. But that's what allowed CeeDee Lamb to really do well. And, I know people mentioned Justin Jefferson, right? So I looked at the Justin Jefferson, huge game he had against the Packers. So he had 11 targets, 9 receptions, an 82% catch rate for 184 and 2 tutties. Awesome. But then you look at guys like Adam Thielen, who played more snaps. He only got 4 targets, right? And he had a 75% catch rate. Then you have KJ Osborne and all these other guys. The main difference, and if you actually, as I'm pulling up my notes as well, give me 1 second, as you actually look at the game footage, and I noticed this, and that Green Bay game was a great comparison, because I felt like going into the game, right, and I'm not going to have full credit for this because I saw Joe Rod over at Cowboys blog say this, it kind of was like, and I had this internal thought like, okay, it's either going to go one of these two ways with the Cowboys. Either we're going to have the ability to utilize our guys as decoys and successfully get Lamb the ball by scheming to the advantages of what he can and can't do and what this offense can and can't do, versus Green Bay, where Green Bay looked lackluster as hell and it didn't really look like they were trying. Right, and so that is the problem, is that when you're comparing, oh, Justin Jefferson is doing all these numbers, you want to know why? It's because he has coaching staffs that are looking at how he is productive, what puts him in the best position to win, and puts him there. That's why you see these guys be successful. Now, there are guys that do it off of pure talent, and Justin Jefferson is definitely one of those individuals, but let's just keep it a buck here. If I'm being honest, this is something that falls on the front office as well. Oh, Space Cowboy, you're talking about the front office again? Here's why. So, Kevin Gray Jr. on Twitter had a fantastic tweet that came out earlier today. CeeDee Lamb being called out publicly by Stephen Jones is notable because Lamb's performance is a direct reflection on their decision to trade Amari Cooper. Lamb not living up to the Cowboys standards would be a nightmare and a referendum on their whole draft and develop process. And that is a massive thing that people aren't talking about, is that you elected to move on from Amari Cooper, one of your legitimate receiving options for those reasons, which I think are annoying, but you're like, hey, we think that CeeDee Lamb is an upgrade. But what did you do to make sure that this guy is going to be productive? Did you upgrade your receiving options? Not really. You kept Michael Gallup. You brought in a James Washington. You let Cedric Wilson go, which, by the way, if Cedric Wilson was still on this roster, he would be your number 2 right now, and I think he would be helping your offense a little bit more because, when you have this scheming problem, now it's coming down to pure talent. Like, can the talent bail it out? Oh, well, Space, you say that, but CeeDee Lamb looked like shit. That's the problem, though, is that you have really one talented guy that's out there being double and triple teamed. I mean, there were plays where I'm like, what the hell? Like, you're trying to force it to CeeDee Lamb in this triple coverage. Now, that falls on the quarterback, right? Because, why are you making that throw? But then in the same token, that also falls back on your offensive play calling, where I'm looking at your coaches and I'm like, okay, like, what's going on here? Like, are you trying at all to scheme this properly? And unfortunately, when you have guys like Michael Gallup, James Washington out, your offense is going to look like trash because you have other guys that have to win on their own because teams are betting on that. And so far, the Bucks bet on that, and they won that. So when I take a look at other Cowboys fans that are pissed at Lamb, understandably so, there are some catches where I'm like, CeeDee, what the hell are you doing here? And, the quarterback making some errant throws here and there. But why is it that these other options work? It's the scheming, it's the threat of other receivers, and when I say that, people think, oh, you need to have an Amari Cooper-like threat for him to be productive. That is not true. I don't think that you need to have an Amari Cooper-like threat just to be productive. The problem is that you need to be able to direct your attention away from Lamb and also scheme the guy to do what he does best. And this is exactly why it's a problem. And also, this is an indictment on your front office once again, because you are literally trying to act like this is a-okay when you have done nothing in the intermediate to resolve this problem. Okay, did you go out and sign a Will Fuller or a Jarvis Landry or a T.Y. Hilton? Guys that can help take pressure off, because you can try to scheme these guys and they are a legitimate threat as opposed to some of these other guys. I feel like if you brought one of those guys in, you would be in a much better position, and I think you wouldn't be hurting as much offensively. I mean, hey, we don't know that, but the proof is in the pudding. Go look at some of these other teams, see how they're schemed their receiving options open, and just, that's the end of that. I have nothing more to say other than, listen, the guy's a number one receiver. He has that talent. We've seen it before. Your problem is you need to have this, not only this receiving core to get fully healthy, number one. Number two and three, your offensive coordinator needs to get this offense more schematically sound, and your quarterback needs to make sure that he's making the right reads, and that also falls in line with how these offenses are coming together. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll leave you guys with that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.